Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lina Varionova. I'm a student here at UVU at the Department of Public Health, and I am originally from Ukraine. So today we are welcoming the thematic session Sustainable Development Goal number 17, strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. Today as a moderator, for this planet, we will have Ms. Jayashri Wyatt, United Nations Chief of Education Outreach. The panelists include Ms. Sharon Eubank, President of Latter-day Charities, Mrs. Eider Inunciaga, Director of the BBK Foundation in Bilbao, Spain, and Dr. Baldomero Lago, Utah Valley University Chief International Officer. As we will not have enough time for detailed introduction, please refer to their bios on our website under SDG number 17. Now I will turn the time to Ms. Wyatt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and good afternoon to everybody. I hope everyone is having a really enriching time here at the University of Utah Valley University for the first ever academic conference on the SDGs. So today we're really here to bring together all of the 16 Sustainable Development Goals. We're here to talk about Sustainable Development Goal number 17, which is really about partnerships and how we can work together and collaborate in solidarity to implement the Sustainable Development Goals across the other 16. So just a couple of thoughts that I wanted to frame up our conversation with this afternoon. The first is that the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted, as we know, in 2015 by all of the member states of the United Nations. So that's all of the countries on planet Earth, 193 member states, who all agreed to the Sustainable Development Goals in principle with the values that they represent. So that is really an extraordinary historical happening in human history, that we have this type of high-level agreement amongst all of the countries on planet Earth. The second thing that I really wanted to frame up our conversation around today is also that when the Sustainable Development Goals were created, adopted, agreed to, it was one of the most inclusive consultations that ever happened around the world. So that means in various areas of the world, people got together, engaged in dialogue and consultations, and they actually actively participated in deciding what these Sustainable Development Goals should be. There was a survey called My World, which millions of people joined in that survey, and that is actually how the Sustainable Development Goals came about and were agreed to. So the Sustainable Development Goals, they don't belong necessarily to the UN. They don't belong to the governments necessarily. The SDGs belong to everybody. They are the goals that we are all a part of, that we have all contributed to, that we all hold responsibility to create and to implement and to achieve. So as we dive into our conversation today around the partnerships, I also wanted to just frame us to understand that only by collaborating and partnering with each other at the global level, at the national level, at regional levels, and at local levels can we hope to really partner in a way that will bring about this achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's really, I think, the background as we engage in this really, I hope, incredible conversation that we're going to have with these three marvelous speakers today. So my first question to the panel this afternoon is, as folks who care deeply about the global goals and the values that they embody and these principles, can you tell us what you're doing in your organizations and your areas of work and influence to partner for these goals? So I'd like to start with Sharon this afternoon, to tell us a little bit about what you're doing in your area of work.
Thank you so much, Jayashri, and I just want to thank, it's just wonderful to be here with Eider and Baldomero. I'm grateful to Utah Valley University and other hosts who have put this on. I think this first academic conference gives us a platform to talk about things that are very useful and practical and important to us, so thank you very much. I want to talk about 3 things about why these values, and particularly the Sustainable Development Goals, matter in my organization and also to me personally. So I hope that it's just a little bit useful for somebody else. But for me personally, the ideal of pluralism, which is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and in most constitutions and laws, this idea that we can vehemently disagree with people and still maintain strong relationships and respect for human dignity, even though we don't agree. So let me just give you the example that I use in my life for why this is important. I have 2 friends, they're married, their names are Christy and Greg. We're sitting in my house, we're having a discussion. Christy and Greg are disagreeing with each other, and they get kind of heated. And she said, I feel this way, and he said, well, I don't, I feel this way. And it started to get a little, I thought, wow, they really do not agree. But the entire time that they're having this discussion with me, she's got her feet in his lap and he's massaging her feet. And I thought, they can be so upset, not upset, but they can be so diametrically opposed in philosophy, but it doesn't change the relationship of respect and dignity that they still have as a couple. Because the entire time he continued to massage her feet and she had her feet in his lap. So something about that image is the definition of pluralism to me. We cannot agree, but we can have respect. We can have a place where people can express their differences. And in the communities where we live now in our culture, we're being driven into little boxes where nobody agrees with anybody, and there's nobody like me because you don't agree with my faith and my politics and my different things, and pretty soon we're so isolated we can't get anything done. So for us, the Sustainable Development Goal of partnership is the great unifier between all the other goals and all the other rights that we are trying to produce in society. So I'm very grateful for that. Do I have any more time, or should we keep? Let me give one example. I'll give an example from mine, because I believe relationships have to precede any kind of action. We can't go forward until we trust the people we're working with and we have some kind of experience with each other. So relationships are the second platform that are so important to me. Let me give an example of why I think this is important. 1969, University of Wyoming is going to play Brigham Young University, and there are 14 black players on that football team who are opposed to some of the policies of the Church of Jesus Christ, which is the sponsor of the university in Provo. And so they went to their coach. They said, we want to demonstrate against this. We don't think it's right. And they were kicked off the team. So these 14 talented black players, 8 of them had NFL prospects, and they were not allowed to play football in their college. So, they went other places, but that had long-lasting consequences. And imagine the tension of that. Well, 3 years ago, a quarterback from the Brigham Young University team reached out to one of those black 14 players and said, this is awful. He said, what happened to you, I'm sad about. And I've seen how you haven't blamed, that you've tried to turn it around for good, and that you've created this philanthropy with the other 13. What could I do? What could we do together to heal this breach? And so they started donating food. And it healed that relationship where people had been adversaries and full of tension. They've donated 1 million tons of food all around the United States. And 30, 40, however many years ago that is, they reached across difficulties, formed a relationship, and it led to action. And that's my goal here today, is that our relationships could compel us then toward action. Because people always say, oh, you just talk about it, you don't do anything. I think it's critical to be able to talk, to understand one another, so that it precedes action.
Amazing. I feel like that does deserve a round of applause. Thank you. I want to turn the floor now to Baldomero Lago, and to really ask you the same question. as someone who cares very deeply about the global goals, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're currently doing to foster partnerships for the goals?
Thank you, Jayashri, and good afternoon to all of you. It's so beautiful to be with you, and I would love to just sit down and listen to you, Sharon. You're just a remarkable speaker. I grew up in Spain many years ago, and I remember when it was time to go to the university, I always valued and saw the university at this building. It's kind of a scary place to go. That was my lens. That's the way I was looking at it. And once you enter the university, they teach you and they prepare you to face the reality of the world. Well, due to multiple reasons, I ended up coming to the United States to go to school, and then I realized once I was studying in the United States that the universities were here not only to prepare me for the workforce, but also to work collectively and to respond to the needs of the community. And to me, that was such an eye-opener. I thought that the only thing I had to do at the university was just do research and write and publish, and that was it. But no, it was my responsibility as a student that is going to enter the workforce to enhance the quality of our lives within our own communities. Later on, I found out as I became a member of that academic community that it was not only my responsibility as an employer or as a student, but also was my responsibility as an academic institution to support and provide support for my fellow citizens within that community. So under that lens, and I've been at this institution now for 16 years, I have tried to work with many communities or many entities or many areas to enhance the quality of or prospective employment, but also to build us together and have a common agenda. Back in 2017, when we became affiliated to the United Nations Department of Global Communication, we started to move that initiative and work very closely with civil society. And that's why we were instrumental to bring the 68th Annual Civil Society Conference, the UN Conference, to Salt Lake City. Later on, through my affiliation and association with Academic Impact and other organizations, we were able to create this event that you are all here today. From my perspective, from my desk, I like to work not only with civil society, but also the private sector, and also with the government agencies, because we all have to work together. And when I meet with, I don't know if Franz Kolb is in the audience, he's not right now, okay, but when I meet with the governor's office, I always ask them, what can we do to support your initiatives? So you're traveling to this place, why can't we just work together and do this? And yes, and we have developed excellent partnerships. When I meet with the folks at the World Trade Center, Miles Hansen and other fellows, the same message conveys. What can we do as an academic institute to bring this force together? When I meet with civil society, when I meet with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, what can we do as an academic institution? So that's why we're here today, because it is the necessity as an academic institution to be able to provide that support to our community. Now, I want you to know, and please stop me, okay? I just get rolling sometimes. One of the things that I want to say is that I am a believer that academic institutions must play a very important role with the community to enhance the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We have faculties, we have schools, we have a college, we have professional experts in many fields that all relate to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Therefore, let's bring that knowledge, let's bring those resources, let's bring that understanding, that excitement that many students come across to be prospective activists and to be voices of support towards this 2030 global agenda. Let's discuss this later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Baldomero. And I think, this conference itself demonstrates the power of partnership. If you look at the young people who are here, the civil society representatives that are here, members of governance, folks in faith-based communities, and other academic institutions, we really see the power of connection. And I think back to your point too, Sharon, just that the discourse itself is respectful. While there may be differences of opinion, there may be fundamental differences as well, but creating and convening this space where people can share their ideas with one another is very, very powerful. Because if we don't build that type of consensus of finding the shared values and the common ground, we don't have the foundation to stand upon to then implement change and take action, right? So this is a powerful example, Baldomero, of the type of partnering that you have done for the global goals. So now I'd like to turn to our colleague, Eider from BBK, to ask really the same question. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do and, you know, the values that are at the heart of the work that you carry out? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for being here. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about BBK, the Banking Foundation. We're a banking foundation, but not a regular one as in the normal way that everyone would think, right? Normally a bank owes a foundation, yeah, and well, puts some part of the budget into doing some social work. In our case, it is the other way around. It is 3 foundations that owe the biggest bank of the Basque Country, so 100% of the benefits of the bank go directly to social work, right? So every time someone opens a bank account, the fees that are paid for that bank account go straight to be reimbursed into society. So this specific foundation, BBK, the one I'm part of, we work in Biscay, which is a province of the Basque Country. I'm sure you have heard about Basque Country these last days here, because, well, there are a few of us representing the Basque Country here from the public administration, from the academia, and myself from this foundation linked to the private sector. And we're very proud to say that the Basque government and, well, the Basque country itself is a very unique space. And it's a very unique space because we have a very rooted identity. We have our own language, as probably most of you already know. But we also have a very kind of inner way of working together. We work in a concept that we call the auzolana, which means the neighborhood work. And that's part of ourselves. That's part of how we see relationships, how we see work. Related to this, and again, as I said before, being very proud of what we have been doing, the Basque government has been a pioneer government in implementing the 2030 agenda. It has implemented it not in a fragmented manner, but in a holistic manner, and not only horizontally, but also vertically, included in all the different layers of public administration that we have in our region. So let's say that we have a multi-level coherence, right? The 2030 agenda comes from up, down, and from down, up as well. And within this enabling environment, it is that us from the foundation and taking into account that we do social work focused on improving the lives of everyone living in Biscay and in the Basque Country, we came up with the idea of creating BBK Cuna, the house of the SDGs. So the SDGs, they do have a house, a physical house, a 5-floor building right downtown in the center of Bilbao. We opened our doors last year. It is a 1914 building that has been refurbished. It used to be a nursery school. It was part of our social work before, but we refurbished it and we developed a social innovation center. And everything that happens within those walls is linked to the 2030 agenda and to the achievement of the SDGs in our region. We like to say, our main goal is to be kind of the hinge, kind of the glue between the different agents of society. So we work with this concept of the quadruple helix. So we work with the public administration, the private sector, the academia, and the civil society, both organized and non-organized. And what we try to do is through socially innovative projects. We try to be a bit disruptive as well in our ways. We try to put all different stakeholders together. We mobilize them and we face them and we put them in front of a challenge always linked to the 2030 agenda, and we get them to work together in order to find solutions to that specific challenge. So we take the 2030 agenda, the global goals, the global challenges that affect all of us, and with the help of a think tank, it's a group of 20 people approximately that are experts in different areas of knowledge, we try to localize those challenges, right? Because as we have been seeing these days, the challenges are global and they are common to the humanity, but they are different and they affect us differently depending on where we are in the world. So it's not the same, the challenges that you are facing here in Utah or the colleagues in Cameroon are facing or the ones we are facing in Bilbao or in the Basque Country. So this think tank helps us localize the challenges to our reality, to our day-to-day basis, and from the BBK team, we try to, as I was saying, put together different stakeholders, and they work into giving solutions to those challenges that we pose. And yeah, sorry.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's just incredible to hear about how we're taking this common language that now exists around sustainable development and utilizing it to bring partners into the fold and to make the global issues, to localize them as well. And I think this is just a fabulous example of how at a regional level you can localize and mobilize to find solutions that make sense in the context where you are on the ground. So I think that's a really key part of partnering for the goals. So I just wanted to say that we're going to do one more round with the panel, that I will ask a question to them to drill down a little bit and get some examples of how they partner. But I just want to ask everybody in the room to think about the questions that you have around partnership, because I think almost everybody sitting here, whether you're from academia or governance or civil society, almost all of you are partnering for the goals right now. So we really want to hear your questions. We really want to engage with you. So as we hear from the panel on one more round, just think about what you want to add to this conversation and any questions that you have. We're going to have that microphone over there for you to come to and ask your questions. But just before we get to that, I want to ask one more question to the panel. And that is really, can you tell us, what does a successful partnership look like to you? And how do you collaborate with your partners on the strategic areas of engagement that you've identified for each of your organizations? And I think I'll start with Sharon again, and we'll go to Baldomero in the same order that we did last time. Please, Sharon.
I get such a benefit listening to these two other panels. I wish I would be last, but thank you. It's a very good question. Why do we partner and how do we partner? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as well as other global faiths, we have an advantage in that we're very local, we're hyper-local at the very congregational level. But we also, in aggregate, have a global presence around the world. And to the United Nations' credit, over the last, I would say, 12 to 15 years, there's been a real orientation toward the unique things that faith-based organizations can do. And we've been recipients of that. I think the door has been open to be able to do some things. So let me give an example. In our strategy, because we're hyper-local, we want to use the values and the energy, the motivation born from our faith to energize members of our faith to do things in their congregations. My personal belief is that we are most powerful in the places where we live and have context, and we can do the very most there. So to engage with other faiths, with the local government, with civil society, and to do things that make our communities better. I thought the panel just preceding us gave some great examples about that. One of the things that we are promoting is volunteerism, that we do things that we don't get paid for because it's for the good of society. And in that way, it kind of knits us together from these isolated boxes that we live in. I'll just give an example because I looked it up because we're here at Utah Valley University. There's a platform called Just Serve. It's an app, it's a website. The whole purpose of it, it's free, is to connect volunteer opportunities with people who would like to volunteer. So I put the zip code in of Utah Valley University this morning, and I looked up. There's 100 and some odd projects of things that you can do locally One of them is you can sign up to bring lasagna to somebody who needs a meal that day. You can help with intergenerational poverty, people who are trying to break that cycle and want mentors. You can volunteer reading with kids who are having trouble meeting their reading goals at school. I could list hundreds of them, but those small things that we do for each other strengthens the fabric of our community. So that hyper-local is very important to us. The middle range is where the Sustainable Development Goals really come in. These goals that we can all agree on, at least in part, there's common ground. We want to work in partnership with the other actors in society to really make progress on food and education and clean cities and partnerships. And so I'll just use nutrition as an example. We are aware in our own congregations, but in the communities as well. Children are not getting enough nutrition. And sometimes it's because they only eat starch. And other times it's because they eat microwave macaroni and cheese. It depends on the circumstances that they live in, but they're not getting enough nutrition, and it impacts everything else about their life, their education, their future opportunities, their resistance to disease. So we are working with dozens of partners in hundreds of countries, not hundreds, 75 countries, to really impact the opportunities for children to thrive between 0 and 5. And that's a huge part of our strategy. And then on top of that, globally, we want to work with the World Food Program, UNICEF, global multinational players who can aggregate resources and then deploy them over a vast amount of area for a large impact. And famine is a great example of that. There are countries, because of conflict, that many people cannot get in, and it's difficult and it's dangerous, and so you have to have the relationships with those governments, and you have to have a trusted intervention. And so our strategic global piece is that. So for us, we look for partners who have global reach, who have proven methodologies in the middle section, and who can engage volunteers, because that's the way we promote our activism.
Before we actually establish a partnership, we need to build a relationship. And that takes time, and that takes some effort. Let me share just a couple thoughts here for a moment. I probably imagine that most of you have in your pocket or in your purse a business card. And as you utilize that tool, which is the business card itself, how do you share your contact information, your life with another individual? And it's really interesting to witness how cultures actually exchange a business card. In some instances, if you go to Asia, for example, they use both hands. It is also a respectful act. I'm giving you my information to you. In other cultures, like in the US, oh, well, hello, well, here's my business card, right? What do we do with those business cards? And I can tell you at the end of this conference, you will have a lot of them. And what are you going to do with those business cards, right? For example, in my culture, in Spain, we don't give a business card just the moment that I meet an individual. You have to trust, you have to build, you have to nurture that relationship. Maybe at the end, I may consider to exchange that card with another individual. One of the things that I learned in my life is whenever I'm interested and I receive a business card, immediately I send an email to that individual because I want to start building a relationship. How many times you go home and say, oh my goodness, I have like 20 business cards now, what am I going to do with those, right? Why don't we just connect? Try to say, that act that you give me your information, I'm going to continue to build it. That is building a relationship. And once you have that knowledge, and once you get to know the individual, then you start building a partnership. In my role as Chief International Officer for Utah Valley University, I have the opportunity to travel to different places or to attend some conferences. And every time I walk somewhere at an international location, they come to me and they say, we need to do an MOU between your institution and ours. And the question is, why? Tell me about why do you want to partner with us, right? Can we find some common ground? And that is the concept for me to build a relationship. What is our common ground? What is the quid pro? What is the building the relationship that I'm going to gain for your, from you, this exchange? And what can I offer that is going to be beneficial to you as well? So building a partnership has to be an equal. There has to be reciprocity in this whole process. And it has to benefit. And when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and building partnerships, we need to not only be able to find what connects us, but to be able to identify universities. And I'm so grateful there are so many universities represented here in this venue and throughout this conference from many different regions of the world. And I just hope that we can find that common ground from this house and between and among yourselves so you can continue building those partnerships. I totally believe that we live in silos. And it is time to turn down those silos and so start building bridges so we can start sharing that knowledge. And that's what we do, the things that we do in this house. And that's what we have this conference. The first international conference on the Sustainable Development Goals. There are millions of universities in this globe. There are thousands of universities in the United States. But it has to start within the individual. Do I believe in this, and how can I move forward? And that's why this conference was created, for us to be able to build these partnerships and work together and exchange that information and find common grounds. Thank you.
Yeah, so in order to answer your question, I would like to pose another question. So if I drew an M here, what would the audience see? A W, right? And Sharon and I would see an M, and Jayashri would see an E, or a 3, sorry, and Baldomero would see an E, right? So a successful partnership would that be for me, right? A partnership where all the approaches and all the different perspectives are included from all different edges. So, and I'm benefiting from being the last one, Sharon, here. I would like to give 3 examples, following a bit what Sharon was explaining before in different layers as well. So, in the work that we do in BBK Cuna, in the House of the SDGs, as I was saying, we work with different stakeholders, and I think we are managing to slowly get to successful partnerships. Of course, we're failing in some others, and not everything is always bright, but I think we are successful in some of them. So the first one I would like to share here is the partnership with the public administration, and in this case with United Nations as well. The Basque government has been working really hard to bring the United Nations presence to Bilbao and to the Basque country through an office that will be working on the localization of 2030 agenda. And we have been partnering with the Basque government in some in every other issue, and just this last year we have joined this partnership as well, and we are very happy to say that this will soon be happening in Bilbao, and we will be part of that. So that would be at the, let's say, the highest level linked to the SDGs and the 2030 agenda. The second level I would like to mention would be with organizations, right? Because, well, in the House of the SDGs we do many different projects, and some of them are focused on funding projects that give answer to challenges that we pose. They are call for applications, but they are not normal call for applications. They are not ordinary. We request organizations to present their proposals together with different agents, right? So if a non-for-profit is the one leading the proposal, the non-for-profit has to work with a private organization or with a public administration or with a university or a research center. So we want different approaches to be included in the proposal, in the solution that they are drafting for that challenge that we pose. And the last example that I'm gonna give you is focused on the citizen participation. We have a whole line of work working with individuals, working with people with names, and people that we try to empower, that we also try to involve in and realize on how important our individual behavior is in order to achieve the SDGs, right? Because I myself can be part of BBK Foundation, but I can also be either just a person who goes to the grocery shop and decides if she buys fruit that has been produced here or in the other side of the world, or if I check where my clothes have been made, right? So we work with individuals in all these different aspects through different ways. And one of the projects that we are very proud of is the Neighborhood Advisory Council. The building is located in an area that has been deprived economically and a bit disadvantaged for the last 30 or 40 years. So we wanted to empower people and co-create and co-decide some of the issues of the project itself. So we created the first council that was made out of a lottery within the neighborhoods around the building. So we have a group of 21 people that help us decide some of the most important issues of the project, and the group is very heterogeneous, right? We have a retired psychiatrist, 84 years old, or we have a woman who has been working in her house for her whole life. But I would like to tell you the specific case of Marcos Alejandro. He is this young guy. He's 35, 40. Well, perhaps for the students he's not so young, but and he was born in Puerto Rico, and he moved. He tried to find a better future, and he moved to Canada. And you know, he was working illegally there, so he was arrested and he had to go to prison. And once he got out, he came to Europe. Well, before that, he got married in Canada, and he managed to move to Bilbao with one of his children, with his eldest son, who also has autism. And Marcos was selected to be part of this council, and you know, it was really touching to see how, well, he would come with his son to all the meetings, and he has been part of all the participatory processes that we have presented to the council. One of them was linked to architecture. They were designing the space outside the building. They were deciding how would we put the furniture in it, what kind of work needed to be done, what was the use that was they wanted to give to the space, etc., etc. So he was working with architects, and he was working with the town hall, and he was working with the Spanish regulations, and he was part of that process, and he was telling us how empowered he felt and how listened. And I think that partnerships are important at all these different levels. It goes from one side to the other, from the highest end of the 2030 agenda and institutions and policy development to the people that is behind everything that we are doing, with names and families and stories. And I think that our challenge is to manage to be everywhere and to take the time to include everyone, every voice, and as the agenda says, not to leave anyone behind.
Thank you so much for all of your interventions thus far. I think, you know, the point that you're hitting on, I think all of you, and we heard it come really through loud and clear, is this point about inclusivity, right? That's really the key to realizing the Sustainable Development Goals. We really have to work across genders, we have to work across generations, and we have to work across geographical locations in order to hear all of the voices and all of the challenges in order to find the right solutions that make sense for the context in which the challenges actually are coming from. So I really thank you for that point about inclusion and inclusivity. I think it's at the heart of the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'd really love to open it up now for questions. Okay, I see one here, one in the balcony, one right here. So we'll go in that order if we can. Please, if you could come down to the mic, that would be amazing. Or just come across to the microphone. And if you could just tell us what your name is, where you're from, and what your question is, and who it's directed to. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Afame Fnato. I'm from Nigeria. I really want to thank the organizer of this conference. It's been so informative and so powerful. And for most of us from Africa, or all of us from African delegation, we have really enjoyed the SDGs goals, and we have organized ourselves because we know some of the challenges we face in Africa is that some of our governments are not really setting the framework that will drive the SDG goals to the grassroots. And most of us came here based on individual capacities to gain the knowledge. We're hungry to be able to make sure that our people are not left behind in implementing and achieving the SDG goals in 21st century. So here, all of us, the African delegation, come together to say, let us form a purified voice, to have a Twitter space, to have a networking whereby we can, as a group, we need together as we go back to our various countries to continue to have a discussion, have a platform where we're having a discussion to say, and also to organize for the next year SDG conference. But my question is, as African delegation, how do we partner with most of us from around the world here as we go home and as we have come together to form African SDG delegation so that we can reach out to each and every one of you to say, hey, we have this initiative going on in Africa. How do we partner with you to be able to achieve it in our various countries? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and you don't have my love for your continent and your people. It is fantastic. Thank you for making the effort to come from so far away. Yes, we want to partner with you. There's not a question about that. And just that synergy that you bring into this conversation, I think, is vital. What you are doing with your own community, you're already partnering. Let us not forget that. What you're doing now, you're reaching out. My experiences in attending conferences is that the best things that ever happen in a conference happens in the hallway. So make sure that you reach out. You just give me a wonderful idea, a wonderful suggestion. I think what we can do is within our own website to create a list of some of the universities that have come and attended and find a contact individual that we can start working on building this. As we are building the next conference next year, I want to make sure that the organizers actually bring that concept into the discussion. How can we reach out to those that are sharing the same common value in support of the partnership of the goals or even support of the 2030 global agenda? But it's doable, and this is why we convened here in Utah today. So yes, let's do it. Next.
Thank you. I will take our next question. I'm just noticing that we don't have any women who are next for questions, so I'm just encouraging. Okay, so one here, and if you can come over to the mic as well, please. Our next question.
Okay, thank you. Good day to everybody. My name is Amel Jackson Sekep. I'm a doctor, PhD holder in medical biochemistry and pharmacology. At the same time, I'm senior lecturer at the University of Boya. I'm from Cameroon. And please allow me to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Lago. Yes, it's because of him that I'm here. I'm one of the youth scholars of Wyatt Mara conference. Thank you. And my question is, I can ask the question and then provide some explanation, please. So my question, how should we proceed to align all stakeholders or parties to a success, for example, to overcome the challenges that we are facing? I can consider the example of antibiotic resistance, for example. Yes, it's my field. And on Wednesday, I presented a topic on that field. So my topic was about the urgent need to establish a multi-sectoral action to fight against antimicrobial resistance in sub-Saharan African region, of course, to achieve good health and well-being. And it's widely acknowledged that antimicrobial resistance is a global health concern facing humanity. And it affects almost all sectors, human, plants, animals, yes. And today we have some alarming figure. Let's take the example of the death rate, for example, due to antimicrobial resistance. Today we are experiencing more than 1,200,000 deaths per year due to antimicrobial resistance. And there is an estimation, we're saying that by 2050, we will assist to about 10 million deaths due to antimicrobial resistance per year. And of course, Africa and Asia are those two continents which will be more affected by the situation. Hence the need for all stakeholders to come together, work together to overcome that situation. But now the problem is how to align. We identify the stakeholder, the government, the civil society organization, the industry, the academia, research institute, but at the end, there is that challenge which remains. How to align all stakeholders to overcome the challenge of antimicrobial resistance in sub-Saharan Africa, but also worldwide. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for having that passion. Everyone in this room can feel how strongly you feel about your work. We're very grateful for that work. I'm going to answer this question, others could maybe, but I'm going to come in from the side because I'm going to tell a story that I think is helpful. A friend of mine told about her family. They all had dinner one night, a family of little children, 4 brothers and then a little sister. And then the mother said to the family, "We're going to have our carpets cleaned, so will you please move all the furniture out so that when the people come to clean the carpets, they can do that." So the little girl had gone to bed in her bedroom and she was asleep. The brothers moved all the furniture out. And then in the way that brothers do, they thought it would be funny if they took all of her clothes out of the closet, everything out so that it looked like she was left all by herself in the room. In the morning, she woke up and she was in a completely bare room. And there was a sign on the door that said her name, "We've moved. We'll send for you soon." And she sat there and just cried. She just cried. She couldn't believe it. Her whole family was downstairs in the kitchen eating breakfast, and they were waiting for her to come downstairs, but she didn't. She was so upset that she just stayed in that bare room crying. I bring this story up because the dynamic of attending a conference like this is we've exchanged business cards, we've talked to people in the hall, we feel energized and connected. But when we go home and those connections fade away, it feels like all the furniture's been removed and somebody's playing a joke on us. And it helps me to remember it takes 3 or 4 attempts at connection before we find something that really sticks. And what we have to do is continue to open the door, go down the stairs to where breakfast is being held, and try again. So my plea for everyone here is as you try to leverage the connections that we've made here, and you're so excited, and it doesn't click, please don't get discouraged. Please don't sit in that bare room and cry and say, "This never works out for me," but continue to reach out and try again. It is in the consistency that the relationships develop so that you can have that alignment on the passion that you have.
Great, we'll take our next question, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hassan. I'm from Belgium, but I go to school at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. I also represent the World Cohesion Organization at the UN as United Nations Youth Representative. First of all, I want to thank everyone on this panel for all your insights and the wisdom they shared with us today. Jayashri, I appreciated your thoughts on finding that shared value to build that foundation that is needed to move forward and a focus on inclusivity as well. I also agree with the value of engaging in conversations and dialogue, even if you and the other party fundamentally disagree. Over the course of the past few days, I've had a lot of these challenging conversations with a lot of people where I fundamentally disagreed. But looking back at it, those conversations were so meaningful that that's probably like my main takeaway from this conference. I'm really grateful for that. Because agreeing to disagree is important. Understanding where someone is coming from is crucial, and fundamentally disagreeing is good and needed because that's how you learn and move forward as a society and as a person as well. But what I personally sometimes struggle with is that, if you look at the case, what if there is a fundamental disagreement on basic human rights and dignity? I'm part of the LGBTQ+ community, for example, and a lot of faith-based organizations, political organizations, other organizations, individuals even, have a certain doctrine or certain beliefs that I feel threatens my identity and my ability to not just be who I want to be, but just be who I am. And it's exhausting to have to fight about something as simple as my existence in the most simple terms in a form that I take on such a regular basis. So my question to you is, how do you think we can form partnerships with those parties while not giving up on those values and our own personal identity and our human dignity? Thank you.
I think I'm going to take that one, right? And please, the other panelists can join. You know, I think this is a really important question to be asking, especially in the times that we're currently living in. And I guess one of the things that I've been reflecting on recently is there's a report that has recently come out from UNESCO. And the report is called Intercultural Dialogue, and it's a framework for creating and implementing intercultural dialogue. And it was supported by these two countries, Kazakhstan and Canada. And so one of the main findings of this report on intercultural dialogue is that in countries and places and regions where intercultural dialogue is facilitated and enabled, you see less violence against women and girls, and you see less violence in general erupting across those cultures. And so I think that what I would say is I can hear the exhaustion, I can also hear your passion, right? And I think that is key, that we have to continue to have these conversations. And sometimes they're uncomfortable. Sometimes they're really difficult. But unless we are willing to come to the table, and unless we're willing to make room at the table for everyone, then we cannot make progress. And sometimes it is very difficult because there are doctrinal, belief systems, and there are laws in place in some countries, right, that are very, they're very real, right? And they have real life consequences for people. But we must continue to have the conversation. And I would say that one of the most profound parts of that conversation is first-person narrative. We know, studies show us that when you share your personal story with someone else who may not disagree with you, that human-to-human connection and that understanding of our shared humanity can actually change hearts and minds. That's the only thing that really ever has, and it's the only thing that ever will. So I just want to thank a lot of the young people who have been standing up and making their voices heard, and it has been uncomfortable for you, but every time you share your personal story, right, and it's authentic, and it's yours, it changes every single person in the room who's listening. And that's really the other thing, is the art of listening and understanding on a deep and profound level. And the more we can engage in that deep and profound listening, the more we're going to be able to change policies and laws and even doctrines, right? These things they sometimes seem immovable, right? But things actually are changing. They are moving. Progress is being made. And you are the change. So continue with what you're doing, I guess, is my encouragement to you. And we've been so blessed to have you as a part of these conversations. And I think we're coming close to the end, but I want to get these last two questions in, if we could, please.
Hi, my name is Annalisa Kapener. I am a student at BYU. I'm actually a member of the BYU Sustainability Lab, and my focus is on giving access to clean water, clean drinking water. And I've been at this conference, and I've just been thinking about, we have these 17 amazing things that we're trying to focus on. There's so much to cover, and we have limited resources, and thinking about your guys' focus about partnership. And I'm thinking, more related to academia, we have so many of these institutions and these individuals with different focuses and different passions. And I just wanted to hear your advice on how we can come together as individuals with our different passions and our different backgrounds to work together and to be able to fulfill these goals that we have in our varying backgrounds. But thank you.
I will just briefly say, nice to see you, Annalisa. I think one of the great opportunities that faces us now is the the ability to say no, to specialize, and to be strategically clear about what you can do and what you can't do, and then to align yourself with the constellation of other people. Because the problem right now is that resources are duplicated over and over again because we aren't convening enough to coordinate with each other. And there's lots of reasons why we don't coordinate with each other. So I think, to me, that's one of the most important single tips that I could give is be very clear about the niche that you follow and then ally yourself with other people who fill out that circle, and it will overcome duplication.
If I may, we began planning this conference 2 years ago, and we have tried and attempted to reach out to as many institutions, not only local institutions across the state, even within this country. And here we are having the voices from Benin, from Cameroon, from many places, from Belgium or from Pennsylvania. The opportunity, sometimes we give that opportunity to our friends, to our neighbors. And sometimes it could be a little bit even depressing when you're trying to promote programs and then you find yourself alone, or maybe with a few isolated individuals that are still sharing that interest. And my question is, what do we need to do to cross that bridge, to enable individuals to also join the partnership? It's interesting because we may find individuals that have interest in a certain specific SDG, right? But how do we connect? And then you create venues and they don't participate. But we need to continue to carry on. You know, I've always said, okay, we have developed this conference. There are 17 goals. I don't expect all the students at Utah Valley, the 43,000 students at Utah Valley, to come for 3 full days, you know, getting bombarded with all the 17. No, that's not the intention. But let me tell you, if you're interested in water, we had wonderful sessions with in fact, a full professor from BYU gave the most incredible lecture on water. So that is what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to allow individuals to come, present the research, share their thoughts. And I just hope that if you're still passionate, let's continue. Let's build that partnership. And that's what we're here for, the 17th goal, right? Thank you.
We're going to take our last question, I think. Please.
Hi, my name is Trista Sarmiento. I'm here from Orem, Utah. My background is in helping individuals access careers in technology and the broader perspective of helping digital literacy and digital inclusion. I had the fortunate opportunity to attend a business conference this last week, and it was really energizing and fascinating how corporate, at least Utah local companies, tech companies, have their heart in the right place. They really want to help. And in this discussion, you have the government, nonprofit, civil organizations. I see that the corporate private sector, the for-profit sector is a huge component. And any of you can answer this, what can we do better to incorporate policies that can incentivize corporations to be able to give and to help raise the level of our communities?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think there is something that the private sector has to understand, is that unless they become sustainable, and unless they start taking the SDGs, the 2030 agenda seriously, they will not last. There is this concept that we are kind of emphasizing quite a lot, which is sustainable competitiveness. A private company has to be competitive, but it has to do it in a sustainable way, right? Because as long as the company only is looking at the short term, they lose the long-term vision and they are not going to be able to survive. This is not only something that can be proved, taking into account the macroeconomic vision, etc., but also from the consumer perspective. It is more and more clear that the individuals, we are making our decisions based on not only the price, but only in other variables and other factors that are included in the price, right? So as my colleague Laura was mentioning in the previous panel as well, when you go buy a t-shirt and the t-shirt costs €2, you may start wondering, because you have been here and you have heard Laura presenting in her panel, oh, what happened? Why is that so cheap and this other one costs €10 or $10? What is behind that, right? So more and more individuals are becoming conscious of what corporates are doing, not only on that, but also on the job and the work conditions, right? We all want to have a decent job, and we all want economic growth to be sustainable, and no one likes seeing unemployed people around. And, you know, the private sector has to understand that the better they do, the better the economic system will go, the more consumers they will have, and the longer they will last, looking at the future. Not only that, I mean, I could continue, you know, but also the resources, looking at the environment. I think that the private sector is a bit more conscious and a bit more respectful with the E of the ESG criteria, right, with the environment, and they are kind of integrating these aspects a bit more. It is more common that we see that the products are placed in not plastic, but other kind of devices that are less harmful with the environment. But it is very important that the private sector also takes the S and the G, the social and the government, very seriously. So I think that's a process that they are getting into. I was attending a presentation yesterday from the Professor Michael Baum, who was presented in one of the small rooms. He has made a very interesting study on he presented it on the 25 first most important companies of the United States, and how they are including the SDGs on their vision. And so I would recommend that study to you, or even that you contact him if you want further information. But thank you very much.
Okay, we were going to wrap up, but I see we have one final question. So this will be our last question for this particular thematic session, and then we're going to wrap. Please.
Yes, we're going to make it brief. I'm Esther Lyles. I'm originally from Uganda. I flew in from Denver, Colorado to attend this conference. I want to thank the organizers, because we have really benefited a lot, and we've learned a lot about what the United Nations is doing, and the 17 SDGs. We never knew the details of all that, so it's been very educative. Coming from an African country, it's really puzzling to me sometimes, like the United Nations keeps funding our governments to take care of certain issues and stuff, but you know, they don't see any results. Don't they ever wonder how come there are no positive outcomes? They never go back to follow up, like, because our governments are mostly corrupt. When they give out the funds, they just use it for other things. They don't use it for the intentions that it was, you know, funded for. But United Nations never really does any follow-ups, you know, in that regard. That's one issue. And then my friend Irene here is going to introduce another issue.
My name is Irene Brenda Tamale. I'm from Uganda originally, but a resident in Washington, Seattle. As we've been discussing here, I have something which has been bothering me all the way. Like, United Nations, couldn't they do anything when they saw Putin invading Ukraine? See the innocent children, old people, disabled, dying. Nobody did anything to this one only dictator. United Nations, couldn't they do anything for these people dying until now? Can there anything be done?
Because you mentioned about not leaving everybody behind. So now all these kids are left behind because, you know, while during the war, they're not really participating in any of the beneficial.
Thank you. I really appreciate your questions. You're talking about very deep issues, and I can hear your passion, and I can hear also your frustration. So I appreciate both of those things. So what I can say from my perch, I work in the Department of Global Communications. I sit in New York, and so there's all kinds of different parts to the United Nations. So in terms of follow-up, with regard to humanitarian crisis, food insecurity, climate change, there are so many challenges that are affecting the globe all the time. So the UN, of course, is made up of 193 member states. The countries of the world actually are the United Nations, and they determine the mandates and the programs. So in peacekeeping, you know, it's a government has to give peacekeepers to go into a conflict zone. That's one example. We also have agencies, funds, and programs. So there's UNICEF, right, which deals with issues of children. There's the World Food Program that deals with hunger. There's all kinds of different agencies that work. There's also NGOs that are on the ground. So I think the United Nations is giving, you know, billions of dollars right now in aid to the conflict that's happening in the Ukraine and many other conflicts around the world. But I feel your frustration as I work there as well, because it feels like it's never enough. There's still more challenges. There are still sometimes in certain conflicts we are not able, because we don't have the funding that has been given by governments and other agencies in order to meet the challenges. Right? In humanitarian crises alone, we have asks all the time for billions of dollars to address those challenges. And unless we get the funds to be able to address those challenges, it's not always possible. So I think we need to look to our governments, we need to look to our organizations to have more compassion and to have more engagement. But I certainly agree, it is not a perfect institution. Everything is not being managed as we would like it to be. And so I think that is the reason why we have to double down. We have to work more on our partnerships. We have to work with organizations. I know the LDS Church recently gave $32 million to the World Food Program, right? So there are organizations who are stepping up, and there are governments who are stepping up, but we have such massive challenges that everyone needs to do more. So I know that's not a perfect answer and it's not a perfect world, but if the world was already perfect, it wouldn't need our work and our partnership and our solidarity to continue. So I think that's the best answer that I can give today, and I want to thank you once again for the question, and I would love to talk to you more after the session and to see how else we can connect on this. And I just want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank everyone who has participated in this particular panel. I think our panelists have given us a really great insight into partnership for the goals. Thank you.
If I may, don't forget at 3 p.m. will be your closing plenary session, and we have a lot of surprise. So make sure that you come here at 3 p.m., okay? Thank you.